at yourself. Every morning I have to see your face. You are poor and not worthy of my son. Clean this kitchen until it shines.
Don't you dare cry in my house, marrying a poor woman like you. Finish cleaning before he comes home. If he hears one complaint, you'll wish you never entered this family.
Every morning, the moment Tun's car disappeared beyond the iron gates, Amara's peaceful home became a place she feared. The warm smile that Mama Grace always wore while her son was around vanished within seconds. It was as if another woman had taken her place. The same mother who lovingly packed food into her son's lunch bag would suddenly begin criticizing everything Amara did. No matter how hard the young woman tried, nothing was ever good enough. If she swept the floor until it sparkled, Mama Grace would accuse her of missing the corners. If she washed the dishes twice, she would claim they still looked dirty. If breakfast was served on time, she would complain that the tea wasn't hot enough. Every single day, she found a new reason to remind Amara that she didn't belong in the family. At first, Amara believed things would get better. She thought maybe her mother-in-law simply needed more time to accept her. After all, she had grown up in a poor neighborhood. She never attended expensive schools. She didn't come from a wealthy family. Perhaps Mama Grace was only worried that her son deserved someone from a richer background. So Amara never complained. Instead, she worked even harder. She woke up before sunrise every morning. She prepared breakfast before anyone else opened their eyes. She cleaned every room in the mansion. She washed everyone's clothes. She watered the flowers. She cooked lunch. She cleaned again. By afternoon, her swollen feet were often so painful she could barely walk. But she kept smiling, because growing inside her was the little miracle she had prayed for during the first 3 years of her marriage. Whenever the baby kicked, every pain suddenly felt worth enduring. She would gently place both hands on her stomach and whisper, "Your father is a good man. One day, everything will be all right." Sadly, she had no idea that hope alone couldn't change a cruel heart. One Monday morning, after Tunde left for work, Mama Grace walked into the kitchen carrying a basket of freshly washed clothes. Without saying a word, she threw the entire basket onto the dusty backyard floor. Clean white baby clothes instantly became covered with dirt. Amara stared in disbelief. She had spent almost 2 hours washing those tiny clothes the night before. She had imagined their little baby wearing each one. Mama Grace folded her arms. "Wash them again." Amara quietly looked down. "They were already clean, Mama." "I didn't ask for your opinion." The older woman pointed toward the basket. "I said, wash them again." Without arguing, Amara slowly bent down. Her lower back ached as she gathered every tiny piece of clothing from the dirt. She could already feel tears filling her eyes. Not because of the extra work, but because she knew exactly why it had happened. Those clothes had never been dirty. Mama Grace simply wanted to remind her who held the power inside that house. The young woman carried the basket back inside. She washed every piece again. When she finished, she carefully hung them outside to dry. Just as she turned to leave, Mama Grace walked over, pulled every cloth from the line, and dropped them into a muddy puddle. Amara froze. For several long seconds, she couldn't move. She simply stared at the soaked baby clothes lying in the mud. Something inside her chest hurt more than words could explain. She had dreamed about becoming a mother for years. Every tiny shirt, every little sock, every blanket had been folded with love. Watching them thrown into the dirt felt as though someone was stepping on that dream itself. Mama Grace looked directly into her eyes. "If you're going to cry, do it somewhere else. Your tears don't impress me." Amara lowered her head. "I'm sorry." Those 2 words had become part of her daily life. She apologized, even when she had done nothing wrong, because peace had become more important than pride. That afternoon, she scrubbed the kitchen floor until her hands turned red. The marble reflected the sunlight like a mirror. She smiled quietly. Finally, everything was perfect. Then she heard footsteps. Mama Grace walked in carrying a bucket filled with dirty mop water. She looked around the spotless kitchen. Without hesitation, she tipped the bucket over. Dark water rushed across the shining floor. Amara watched silently. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes for one brief moment. Then she picked up the mop and started all over again. The older woman stood behind her. "You know why my son married you?" Amara remained silent. "Because you fooled him." Still, no answer. "You came from nothing. You had nothing. Without him, you'd still be living in that tiny broken house with your poor family." Amara stopped mopping for only a second. Not because the words were true, but because they reminded her of the people she loved. Her father had worked as a carpenter until arthritis stole the strength from his hands. Her mother sold vegetables under the hot sun every day just to keep food on the table. They had never been rich, but they had taught her kindness, respect, gratitude, things money could never buy. She looked at the floor again and quietly continued cleaning. Inside, her heart was breaking, but she refused to let anyone see it. Every evening, before Tunde returned home, she washed her face with cold water. She practiced smiling in front of the bedroom mirror. She even pinched her cheeks to hide how much she had cried, because she didn't want the man she loved to come home carrying the weight of her pain after spending all day building a future for their family. She kept telling herself, tomorrow will be better. She repeated those words every single night, but tomorrow never changed. Instead, the cruelty only grew worse. Every morning, Amara woke up hoping that maybe, just maybe, today would be different. But hope became harder to hold on to with each passing day. Her pregnancy had entered the 8th month. Walking across the mansion now left her breathless. Her ankles were swollen. Her back ached constantly. Even climbing the stairs became painful. Still, before the sun rose, she was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Not because anyone appreciated her efforts, but because she refused to let bitterness change the kind woman she had always been. Unfortunately, kindness meant nothing to Mama Grace. To her, kindness was weakness. One Tuesday morning, Amara had barely finished serving breakfast when Mama Grace deliberately pushed her cup of tea onto the floor. The cup shattered into dozens of tiny pieces. Hot tea splashed across the marble tiles. Mama Grace slowly looked down at the broken cup. Then she looked at Amara. "What are you standing there for?" Amara blinked. "But,
Mama,
you broke my favorite cup." The accusation stunned her. "I didn't touch it." Mama Grace's face darkened. "So now you're calling me a liar?" Amara immediately lowered her head. "No, Mama." "Then clean this mess before someone gets hurt." Without another word, Amara slowly knelt on the hard marble floor. Her knees protested instantly. Carefully, she picked up every sharp piece of broken glass with her bare hands. Halfway through, one tiny piece sliced across her finger. Blood slowly dripped onto the white floor. She quietly covered the cut with her apron. She didn't want another complaint. Mama Grace noticed anyway. Instead of asking if she was all right, she frowned. "Don't stain my floor." Those 4 words stayed in Amara's mind for the rest of the day.
Not.
"Are you hurt?" "Not." "Sit down." "Not even." "Be careful." "Only don't stain my floor." That evening, Tunde returned home smiling. He walked into the living room carrying a small gift bag. "I brought something for our little champion." Amara's tired eyes immediately brightened. Inside the bag was a tiny pair of baby shoes. She held them against her stomach. "They're beautiful." Tunde gently kissed her forehead. "I can't wait to meet our baby." For one precious moment, the pain disappeared, but Mama Grace quickly interrupted. "Tunde." She sighed dramatically. "I'm worried about your wife." Tunde looked confused. "What happened?" Mama Grace slowly sat down. "I've been asking her to rest." Amara looked up in surprise. "But..." Mama Grace continued before she could speak. "She refuses to listen. She insists on doing everything herself. I keep telling her pregnancy isn't a competition." Tunde immediately turned toward Amara. "You should listen to Mama. I don't want you overworking yourself." The words caught in her throat. She wanted to explain. She wanted to tell him the truth. She wanted to tell him she hadn't rested for weeks, that every task had been forced upon her, that every insult had slowly broken her spirit. But then she looked at his face. He looked exhausted. His eyes carried the weight of endless meetings, business, loans, responsibilities. She couldn't bring herself to add more. So she smiled. "I'll rest more." Mama Grace quietly smiled to herself. Another victory. Another lie believed. Another day of silence. As the weeks passed, the emotional wounds became deeper than the physical ones. Mama Grace stopped insulting only Amara. Now, she began insulting the unborn baby too. One afternoon, while folding tiny baby blankets, Mama Grace looked at Amara's stomach and said, "I hope this child doesn't inherit your face." Amara's hands froze. The room suddenly felt smaller. No mother wanted to hear those words about her child. She slowly placed both hands over her stomach, as though trying to protect the baby from words, because sometimes Words hurt more deeply than hands ever could. That night, for the first time since her marriage, Amara cried herself to sleep. Not quietly, not silently. She buried her face into the pillow, trying desperately to stop Tunde from hearing. But pregnancy had made every emotion stronger. Her shoulders shook uncontrollably. Tunde woke up. He gently touched her arm. Amara? She quickly wiped her face. I'm okay. He frowned. No, you're not. For a long moment, she almost told him everything. Every insult. Every humiliation. Every cruel morning after he left. The words reached her lips. Then, she remembered Mama Grace's warning. If you ever turn my son against me. Fear closed her mouth again. She forced a weak smile. I think the pregnancy is making me emotional. Tunde held her close. He believed her, because he had never imagined that someone he trusted all his life could be destroying the woman he loved every single day. The following week, the doctor scheduled another prenatal appointment. This time, Tunde couldn't attend because of an important business meeting. Mama Grace offered to take Amara instead. For the first time in months, Amara felt hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally changing. During the examination, the doctor smiled while listening to the baby's heartbeat. The baby is healthy. But his smile slowly disappeared. The mother isn't. Amara looked confused. What do you mean? The doctor gently closed the file. Your blood pressure is much higher than it should be. Have you been under unusual stress? Before Amara could answer, Mama Grace quickly laughed. Oh, doctor? She's always worrying over small things. The doctor looked unconvinced. He turned back to Amara. I need you to be honest. Too much emotional stress during late pregnancy can become dangerous. You need peace. You need rest. You need people around you who make you feel safe. Those words echoed inside Amara's heart all the way home. People who make you feel safe. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt safe inside that mansion. That evening, she stood alone in the nursery. Tiny baby clothes hung neatly inside the wardrobe. The little shoes Tunde had bought sat beside the crib. She slowly ran her fingers across the soft blanket. Then, without realizing it, she whispered something she had never allowed herself to think before. Maybe this house isn't home anymore. Outside the bedroom, someone had heard every word. Mama Grace quietly smiled, because she believed she was finally winning. That night, Amara stood alone beside the nursery window for a very long time. Outside, the rain gently tapped against the glass. Inside, the little room was filled with tiny clothes, a small wooden crib, and dreams she had spent months preparing. She slowly picked up the pair of baby shoes Tunde had bought. A smile appeared on her face, but it disappeared almost as quickly as it came. The doctor's words refused to leave her mind. You need peace. You need people who make you feel safe. For months, she had convinced herself that love meant enduring everything, that a good wife remained silent, that patience could soften even the hardest heart. But every morning proved her wrong. The next day, nothing changed. As soon as Tunde left for work, Mama Grace walked into the kitchen with the same cold expression. Without saying a word, she handed Amara a long list of chores. Wash every curtain, polish every window, clean every bedroom, scrub the backyard tiles. Even the family servants looked uncomfortable. One elderly housemaid quietly whispered, Madam, let me help you. Amara smiled gently. If Mama Grace sees you helping me, she'll only blame you too. So the old woman sadly walked away. Hour after hour, Amara continued working. The afternoon sun became hotter. Her breathing became heavier. Sweat covered her face. Her feet were badly swollen. Still, she kept going. Not because she wanted to, because she had stopped believing she had another choice. Late that afternoon, she carried a basket of freshly washed blankets toward the nursery. Halfway up the staircase, a sharp pain shot through her lower back. She stopped. Her hand instantly covered her stomach. Another pain followed, stronger this time. The basket slipped from her hands. Tiny blankets floated down the stairs. Amara grabbed the railing. Her breathing became uneven. She called softly, Mama. No answer. She tried again. Mama Grace. This time, the older woman appeared at the bottom of the staircase. Instead of rushing forward, she simply looked up. What happened now? I don't feel well. My stomach. Mama Grace frowned. You've been looking for excuses all day. It's not an excuse. Before Amara could finish. The pain became unbearable. Her knees gave way. She collapsed onto the stairs. The sound echoed through the mansion. Only then, the servants rushed forward. One of them immediately called Tunde. Another called an ambulance. For the first time, fear appeared on Mama Grace's face. Not fear for Amara. Fear of what her son might discover. The ambulance arrived within minutes. As the paramedics carefully lifted Amara onto the stretcher, she kept one trembling hand over her stomach. She wasn't crying for herself. She was praying for her baby. "Please," she whispered, "just let my baby be safe." When Tunde reached the hospital, his shirt was soaked with sweat. He had driven faster than he ever had before. The moment he saw his wife lying unconscious inside the emergency room, his heart stopped. He grabbed the doctor's arm. "My wife. My baby. Please tell me they're all right." The doctor removed his glasses and sighed. "The baby is stable, but your wife has been under severe emotional stress for months." Tunde frowned. "Stress?" "She's been resting at home." The doctor looked surprised. "Resting? Her blood pressure has remained dangerously high for weeks. Someone close to her has been putting enormous emotional pressure on her." You should have noticed. Those words hit Tunde harder than anything else. He slowly looked through the hospital window. Amara lay quietly on the bed. Dark circles surrounded her tired eyes. Even in her sleep, her face looked exhausted. How had he never seen it? That night, he couldn't sleep. Instead, he remembered. Every time Amara said, "I'm fine." Every time she smiled while hiding swollen eyes. Every time she looked like she wanted to say something, only to change the subject. He remembered every dinner where his mother complained, and every moment he had remained silent. He suddenly realized silence had never protected his family. It had destroyed it. The following morning, one of the elderly housemaids quietly approached him. She hesitated for several seconds. Then she said, "Sir, there is something you deserve to know." For the next 30 minutes, she told him everything. How Mama Grace waited until his car disappeared every morning. How she insulted Amara. How she threw clean clothes into the mud. How she made a heavily pregnant woman clean the same floor again and again. How Amara cried alone inside the laundry room. How she begged the servants never to tell him, because she didn't want a son to hate his own mother. Tunde couldn't speak. Every word felt like another stone crushing his chest. He drove home immediately. The mansion suddenly felt unfamiliar, cold, empty. He walked into the kitchen. The marble floor still shined. The mop still leaned against the wall. Everything looked normal, except nothing was. He slowly turned toward his mother. "Mama?" She smiled. "How is Amara?" He didn't answer. Instead, he quietly asked, "Why?" The smile disappeared. "I don't understand. Why did you do those things to her?" Silence. "I know everything." For the first time, Mama Grace looked nervous. "I only wanted her to become stronger." Tunde slowly shook his head. "No. You wanted to break her." She tried to defend herself. "I was protecting this family. You married beneath your class. I couldn't allow." "Enough." His voice remained calm, but his eyes filled with tears. "You didn't protect this family. You destroyed it." Several days later, Amara finally opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Tunde sitting beside her bed. His beard had grown. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. The moment she looked at him, he lowered his head. "I'm sorry." She remained silent. "I failed you." Still, she said nothing. "I promised to protect you. And every day, I chose the easier silence instead." A single tear rolled down Amara's cheek. Not because she hated him, because those were the words she had waited months to hear. 2 weeks later, the doctors finally allowed her to leave the hospital. Tunde drove her home. But when the car stopped, Amara didn't open the door. She quietly looked at the mansion. Then she softly said, "I can't go back there." Tunde understood. For the first time, he didn't ask her to endure a little longer. Instead, he started the engine again. They drove to her parents' small house. It wasn't luxurious. The roof was old. The walls needed paint. But the moment her mother hugged her, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. 3 weeks later, Tunde packed his mother's belongings. Mama Grace watched silently. "You would send your own mother away?" Tunde looked at her with quiet sadness. "No. You sent yourself away the day you forgot what kindness looked like." She left without another word. A month later, a beautiful baby girl entered the world. When Tunde held his daughter for the first time, he cried harder than he ever had before. Not because of fear, because he had been given a second chance to become the father he had failed to be as a husband. Life slowly moved forward. Every weekend, Tunde visited Amara, not asking her to come home, not asking for forgiveness, simply showing up, changing diapers, cooking meals, reading stories to their daughter. One quiet afternoon, almost a year later, Amara watched him laughing with their little girl beneath a mango tree. For the first time, she smiled without forcing it. She walked toward him, sat beside him, and gently said, "I forgive you." Tunde closed his eyes. Relief washed over him. Then she continued, "But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting." He nodded. "I know. I spent too long waiting for you to protect me. I won't spend the rest of my life waiting for someone to become the man I needed back then." Those words hurt, because they were true. Years later, their daughter asked, "Daddy, what's the most important promise a husband should keep?" Tunde looked at Amara, then gently answered, "If the woman who trusts you ever cries in silence, don't wait until she leaves, before you finally ask why." Amara quietly smiled, not because the past had disappeared, but because she had finally learned real love is never proven by how much pain someone can endure. It's proven by how safe they feel beside the person they love. This story teaches us one important lesson. Never judge someone by their appearance, job, or status. The person you look down on today may be the one who surprises you tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, comment, respect everyone, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.